All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started here, since we're just a couple minutes late, but that's all right. Police and fire. Detective King, do you want to go first? Or how
Yeah. Sorry, I had something pulled up over here and pulled back up on my phone. Okay, so what I was looking at is just the crime statistics, just kind of looking at them, comparing this week to like this same week last year. It said last year at this time we had, for like vehicle burglaries, we had 69. This time we had 16. So had a dramatic drop in that. Pretty much everything's been down. Burglary, it said this week last time there was one. This time this is for District 4, so this goes from like I-15 all the way to 13th East. It says there was one. This week we had 3, so there was 2 more. That was kind of like, it says burglary, it says all other, so it's maybe like sheds and garages and stuff. The actual like residential burglaries, we had 5 the same time last year on this week, and this week we had 2. So things kind of fluctuate, kind of go up and down. Just kind of looking at some of the stats, it looks like most of it's pretty good. There were some assaults and some family issues that kind of went up a little bit, but you really can't control any of that stuff. So good stuff like that. Like I said before, just keeping things locked away. Serial numbers, I keep harking on that. That's a big thing for us. And serial numbers, pictures of items can help us out greatly. So yeah, just being vigilant, calling us whenever you got suspicious people walking around. We'd love to come out and talk with them and see what's going on if we can. Something that's really good that I like with my squad that we've done recently is we went to a training called CPTED. It's CPTED, and it's crime prevention through environmental design. And so we went through the basic class. There's one more class we actually certified in it. It's a national certification, but we're hoping that we can use it towards the city. Like one of the things they talk about is just helping with design. Like you look at a lot of the places. You can see, sometimes you go to places, you look out windows, you see big bushes and big trees, and one of the things they harp a lot on is the 2-foot, 6-foot rule, just small little changes where you got shrubs that are no more than 2 feet high and trees that are limbed 6 feet high. So that way, as you look, you got a natural surveillance. So that way, stuff like that can help prevent crime, whether it's you got a window and you're looking out and it gives you sight to see what's going on. You can see who's there, who's in the area. Or trying to avoid what they call ambush points, where you take away that hiding spot. And so they're talking about redesigning the water sewage facility, and that was something a couple of us were able to actually go over and kind of give them our 2 cents worth on trying to help design some things that we learned to try to incorporate it towards the city to try to help out with some of that stuff. So I think it's a really good program that we're doing, and we've been looking at, and we're looking to see what we can do to try to further that and help benefit the city. Does anybody have any questions for me about anything that's going on? Yeah.
I'm interested in that report you gave saying that crime is down relative to last year for just 1 week period. Mm-hmm. Now, are we seeing a downward trend larger than 1 week? Maybe down in general? And if so, can we attribute to anything? Maybe the raid that happened on the homeless shelter, the 2-time raid now?
As far as how it's connected to what happened at the shelter, I can't give an exact correlation because this is over the entire area. May have had an issue. It kind of gives just the report. It just kind of goes through. This is stuff you can find if you go to like the slcpd.com. They have what they call crime reports. You can get on their CompStat, and they have all that information, just kind of going over different stuff. Exactly what it was. If there was a specific person that was arrested that was doing it last year, and now he's in jail. I don't know, but
what's that website again?
slcpd.com. But I like to think it's just people being active and vigilant in their neighborhoods helps out a lot.
And what, is there a link, like a specific
If you go
spot
to
to find it?
if you go to slcpd.com,
Mhm. Is that like the same report that, the coalition puts out every once in a while, like that newsletter? And it shows pictures of like drug busts and have like a bunch of heroin and, you know what I mean? You seen that?
the
I think it's about Pioneer Park Coalition thing.
I
There's a
haven't
newsletter that comes out.
I haven't seen specifically
And
that.
sometimes there's like these pockets of, I guess, evidence. I don't know what you call it.
So I'm trying to pull it up. So if you go to, I'm having issues with my phone. If you go to saltlakepolice.com or slcpd.com, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there is a link that you can get to that. So it has all that information. Okay? If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. My number is 801-799-3624, or you can email me at ciudistrict4@slcgov.com. All right?
Great, thank you. All right, fire. Let's hear it.
There were 3 operation diversions. 3.
Oh, 3.
Do you want the stats?
Hello, everybody. My name's Chad. I haven't talked to you guys before. I'm actually pretty new to Station 1 area. I've only been here about a year, so that's pretty new in firefighter terms. Captain Carter usually talks to you, but he's giving me the opportunity to come and talk to you. How many Cleveland fans are in here?
Go Cubs!
Hurry up!
I guess there's a baseball game tonight, no one told me.
Yeah, usually there's a lot more people here, so we decided it's gotta be the World Series, right? Well, like I said, we're out of Station 1. Up through September, we've had about 3,200 calls working out of Station 1. So a little over 10 a day at this point. It seems like at the end of the year, working out of Station 1, that's where we end up about 10 a day. It's one of the busier engines in the city. We run a lot of different types of calls out of there. There's a lot of exciting things going on in the fire department right now. As you all know, Chief Dale retired last month. So we heard from the city that we are down the process and looking for a chief. Apparently they're going through interviews and they have narrowed it down to a few candidates. So we're waiting to see where we're moving forward with the chief. As far as an update on the stations, they are building Station 14, a brand new Station 14. And then we have Station 3 and the new logistics building, and they plan on breaking ground in the spring, starting to build those. And then one of the programs the fire department's really excited about right now is the new cadet program. We have a group of cadets that are high school students, 14 to 18, that go through, they're attending some sort of Salt Lake educational experience, and their cadet program where they're just being mentored by people within the fire department and also crews to hopefully come up and work in the fire department as they get older. So that's pretty much all that's going on in the fire department right now. Do you guys have any questions for me? The summer was busy this summer on fires. It seemed like it was an extra busy summer with structure fires. We had, towards the end of summer, it seemed like we were going with quite a few structure fires for whatever reason. There's no rhyme or reason for that. No stat to say why that would be. But it was busy this summer. So, any questions?
I did have a curiosity regarding the incident that happened just north of the building across the street from Trolley.
7 South?
Yeah.
It's a meat packing company. There was an ammonia leak.
Okay.
That's what that was.
Yeah.
Is that the second one that's happened?
That is the second one that's happened there, yep. But that's what it was. It was leaking ammonia.
Okay.
And they're underneath that, or they're going under right now,
Palace
almost a complete
Meats.
redo
That's right.
of their system to get it up to grade. So shouldn't see another problem there, hopefully.
You have a question?
Well, I had a couple comments. One, since Daniel's here from planning, just point out that maybe a meat packing plant's not the best option in a form-based zone.
Daniel's duly noting that, I bet.
I will say that company's been in business in Salt Lake City since 1893.
Yeah.
And up here for, I can't remember how many, a lot of years.
At least 30.
Well, they've been there since the 50s. They built that place in the 50s.
Yeah.
As long
And
as
they
I
do
work
sell to
there.
the public. I bought from them one time.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
So, anyway, just the multiple occurrences, probably
Right.
aging equipment,
Yeah.
all of that, but the FBUN2 allows meat packing.
Yeah. Well,
And
That's definitely Daniel's jurisdiction. As fire department, we just go there and take care of it.
Right.
You just put out the fires.
Yeah. Anything else? All right, thanks for having us.
Thank you. All right, Hildy, you wanna come on up?
All right, knows how you go. Okay.
We don't see any of our legislators here. Obviously, they're getting pretty busy these days with the legislature coming up. I did see, although it's campaign related, she's unopposed. Representative Chavez House was endorsed by President Obama today, which I thought was pretty cool.
Which is a nice thing, right? So, good afternoon, my name is Hildegard Koenig, and I am the committee liaison for District 2, 4, and 7 for a little bit, and I'll be only for 2 and 4. They're pretty busy districts, right? So, but one of the things I wanted to bring some information in regards, first of all, I'll start with Operation Diversion. There was a total of 132 people. So first of all, the Operation Diversion was, the first one was on September 29, which they had a total of 49 people. 43 went to the receiving center, 5 went to jail, 1 to the hospital. And then the second operation, October 3rd, it was, and that one was 40 people total, 32 went to the receiving center, 8 to the jail. And then the last one, which was October 7th, there was a total of 43 people, 38 in the receiving center, 4 went to jail, and 1 went to the hospital. And so the total has been 17 people that have been to the jail, and then 113 to the receiving center. And the prosecutors, like I stated in the previous last month, they're very much about wanting to prosecute and make this a priority, those people that have gone to jail. So I'll go to the next. So the winter shelter, one of the things, the last week the administration provided to the council with a county supportive plan to address the potential overflow needs at the row home shelter for the winter. And so this is a data-driven plan, and one of the things is that they want to make sure that no one goes up, right? We don't want no one out in the cold. And so our goal is to first determine in regards to the actual need, and then the population assessment, and then also make a decision from the actual data and need. One of the things is that you know, they believe, the administration believes that the new facility beyond St. Vinny's, whether they're temporary or permanent, they should follow the new guidelines. And so, which this for the collective work. So a lot of those things, and so you'll have more information when it comes to that. But once again, we want to make sure that no one goes out in the cold. People, we want to, we always want to treat them with respect and dignity, no matter who they are. So, the other thing of the homeless site selection, and you're probably going to be hearing that later on, but just one of the things, once again, we have the 4 sites. The mayor and the city council are working collaborative. I can't even talk English today. Those words, sometimes are hard. But one of the things that they want to is to make sure to make this is a priority for the mayor. To get these 4 centers. The sites will be publicized on November 21st, and then there will be a week, a series of engagements for the public the week after, for the public to be able to get their input when it comes to the design of the facilities, the community impact, and the mitigation efforts. So we will have that information. We will provide and publicize when those series of engagement workshops will happen, and we'll publicize that in English and Spanish and different languages because we want to make sure we get the input from the community. Okay. Any questions? Yes.
Yes, input from the community. That's new. Is this a formal public engagement process on the 4 sites to approve them, or does that mean there's a possibility they could change?
No, not to approve the sites.
Okay.
To approve design and to talk about other aspects of the centers, but the sites will not change.
So it will just be for, the designs, the impact it will have, and those things. So we will want to make sure that we hear that from the community. And we will make sure that we give enough information once that happens and when they're going to be and different times, so people can give their input, and also people can reach out to us if they want to give input prior or after that too. So please know that's priority of the mayor, and so we want to make sure of that. And my door's always open, and you'll know that. So please. Any other questions? And I apologize, I have to run to 2 more community councils tonight before 9 o'clock, so I'm running back and forth, so I apologize, I have to leave. But once again, you can contact me. My office number is 801-535-7238. And so you're welcome to reach me through that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, Derek, come on down.
Thanks, Hildy. You do a really great job at representing Mayor Viscusi, so thanks. I want to apologize for not being able to make it last month. I was traveling and doing some personal work, so I hope the meeting went well. It's good to be here tonight. I don't know if by raise of hands, who was at or paid attention to the council meeting last night? Anybody? So we had a very lively formal meeting. We had almost 50 folks show up on behalf of the Dakota Access Pipeline, which was awesome. About 50 people at 2 minutes each. We were there for well over an hour and a half listening to public comment. It was a very respectful dialogue, but quite engaging. So that was really lively. If you have some time, definitely go watch that on the City Council's website. What else? Oh, yesterday we extended the impact fee moratorium, which, as you may know, was started. The original moratorium began last year and was set to expire today. We received a proposed plan from Mayor Viscusi earlier in October. We are holding a number of public hearings, and we'll be adopting the formal plan in December. So we'd love to hear your feedback on that. I also, because we haven't had a meeting since our RDA meeting on the 18th of October, I brought a little bit of information that I thought might be helpful. And pass that around. This is just a very basic overview of what we did. We allocated over $30 million for homeless services. Approximately $21 million of that would be for affordable housing. So the exact way that this money will be spent is still to be determined. We are partnering with the mayor's office, and we'll be moving forward on a specific plan in the coming months. As the District 4 representative, I am absolutely open to hearing your thoughts and feedback about how you'd like to see that money dispersed. For me, I'd like to see it, in particular, a good chunk of that go toward addressing the immediate need for homelessness assistance and those who are experiencing homelessness on a chronic basis, so 6 months or longer. But it would also be great if we could put some of that money to good use for the long term. Mike Ackerlow from the Housing and Neighborhood Development Division has spoken a number of times about the great need for a community land trust. So I'm going to be pushing for some of this $21 million to be used as seed money for that. But I'm absolutely open to hearing thoughts and feedback, so if you have any ideas, please send them my way. Are there any concerns or questions about this allocation that the council, acting as the RDA board, made?
Good job.
You like it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We've received a lot of praise, a lot of criticism, but I feel really good about what we were able to do.
It's the only pot of money that's available for this purpose, and it was very courageous of you to do it. So, thank you.
Thanks for saying that. Yes.
I'm also very happy that it was done, but I heard that it might cause some issue for the Station Center project.
We pulled a lot of money out of Station Center,
Okay.
but none of it will impact the infrastructure. These dollars were, a lot of them were part of historic projects that were not on the docket to be completed, and then they were reallocated in this budget proposal from the RDA. The money that was set aside for Station Center and some infrastructure projects over there actually weren't in the pipeline yet. We will be moving forward on those infrastructure projects later on. I'm going to be pushing for a bond to do that though, and a few other creative funding mechanisms. The way with super low interest rates right now, I see no reason why the RDA should be holding on to cash. We need to be deploying those resources in a much more strategic and thoughtful manner. So a bond is a great way to do that. But we have to wait and see how the mayor feels about that idea. We have a few other options at our fingertips, but we are moving forward with Station Center. There was some misinformation in the community. We have not halted any projects. The money that we pulled out were from pots of money that actually had nothing attached to it specifically, so.
Okay.
I don't know if that answered your
It
question.
does.
But yeah. Anything?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
It'd be nice if the public in general knew that the RDA is going to be providing money to buy the homeless resource sites and put everything in stone instead of allowing a real choice with the community.
Yeah.
Next Tuesday, or excuse me, 2 weeks from next Tuesday, or you know what, the 15th, at 2 o'clock, you're gonna have a hearing, but nobody knows that that's an important decision, and probably nobody's gonna show up and talk about it. It's a shame.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the RDA board and the council, we didn't know that we were going to be allocating money from the RDA until about 20 hours before our meeting.
Yeah.
But with the legislature, you know, on our tail, we have to move quick, and this is the only accessible resources that we have at the moment to really address and put options on sites. So the mayor's out there looking for up to 6 sites, excuse me, to put options on for these new resource centers.
I'm confused. I thought you already budgeted $1 million for the options.
We budgeted almost $12 million for options.
No, but earlier this month, or last month, you budgeted $1 million for options.
From the city's general fund?
Yes.
Yes. They need more than $1 million to put options on sites.
Okay.
It's pretty nice.
At some of the collective impact meetings and at the last site facility meeting or whatever it was, last week, I think it was right here. Pamela Atkinson and a couple of other service providers in the area brought up a couple of things that I thought the collective impact was sort of ignoring and not paying attention to, whether it was intentionally or not, I don't know, or it's gonna take a lot of dollars to address. But some of the on-street issues are being created by people that are really have mental health issues that they won't move into the indoors, into some of the facilities. And now when these facilities move, these people will follow the services. If there's food being given or medical services being given, and now they're just gonna transfer the problem to another neighborhood without having housing or ways of treating this, or dealing with this population. And that concerned Ms. Atkinson and other people, and I don't see them addressing it, and I'm hoping the city council starts asking questions about this population, because you're the last hope we have, Derek. You really are, to stick up for us. So this population moving into, from where it is, where people are used to it, to other neighborhoods without having a solution for the problem would be troubling, so.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. You're right. It could become a very big issue for other neighborhoods if we don't think about this. So my hope is that as these facilities are designed, including all the wraparound services, that there'll be a much different picture for neighborhoods than what we currently have on Rio Grande Street. But I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, we need them, but we have to work the problems out.
And I think that's part of what the Salt Lake County is looking to address with because they're going to be the providers of services. So the Salt Lake Commission is looking just at the sites. Salt Lake County will be working with providers. And so they've got plans in place to start addressing those.
Because they haven't been talked about, that's why I was.
Well, they have.
Those issues.
They have.
Yeah.
They have?
Mhm.
Yeah.
What do?
The county.
with the county.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, I mean, it is a legitimate concern, it's not a,
There's been a lot of
It's
information
nothing,
flying
right.
back and forth the last 18 months, and a
Yeah.
number of various commissions and committees that are working on this, but I feel really strongly about, I feel good about the direction the county is taking their service model, and it's just beginning to roll that out and make modifications, and so, you know, I do believe that a lot of that is on the radar, but I'm sure that there's gaps that need to be addressed as well, so let's just keep talking about it, and I'll raise that concern that you brought up with my colleagues so we can be aware of it as well.
And there was one other quick question. Depends on who's talking about the facilities. At one time, somebody calls them emergency facilities and somebody else calls them housing because they don't want the transient connecting to the emergency in the neighborhoods. And the other person says because they recognize that's a problem, they talk about it as well. The people are gonna come in here and stay for a month and get the treatments and you're not gonna see the transients in the neighborhood. But I hear different people calling it different things in different meetings, and these are people that should know whatever it is, and they seem to address it as one thing depending on the circumstances.
Well, we are calling them resource centers. You're referring to the 4 sites that we're talking about, right? So we're trying to call them resource centers because there's more than just overnight emergency beds there.
Yeah.
And the idea is to, again, have those wraparound services. But ultimately, they ought to be considered just emergency. They should only be an emergency for people. You know, you don't want folks to stay in a shelter for 6 months or more. You know, it should be temporary. And, you know, the conversation around siting the new shelters, the new resource centers, has really taken up a lot of the oxygen in the room, when really what we need to be talking about is the pipeline and getting folks into housing, stable housing. And so my hope is that we can... So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the RDA is a huge player, but
Right.
we also have many other tools, so it's not just the RDA that's gonna be addressing this. We have a number of, you know, zoning tools and other financing options that we could look at, but yeah, housing is key.
So Eric, I know this is on the agenda separately for the site selection, but what role do you see the council placing on the context surrounding zoning? So in terms of intensity of use, and I'll talk more about this with you next week, but there is an area with basically R2, very low density zoning, that's been identified as a potential site, and I'm just going.
Which one?
Oh, you know, I don't want to get the hysteria going any more than it already is, so I'll talk to you about it separately, but my question is, do you have a sense of how your colleagues are viewing the context in terms of the appropriateness of the surrounding zoning for a very high intensity use? So if we're talking about surrounding uses on all sides being very low density, single family duplex housing, would the council see that as an appropriate location for one of these centers, or is the council going to look for a zoning classification that is more intense in terms of development?
From the sites that I've seen, they're all in areas that are D2 or, you know, GC. So I think what we're looking at is something that will accommodate more intensive use and be more appropriate for an intensive use. But you also have to keep in mind that not putting it in a residential in R zone and putting it in D2 or D1, that's still near residents. You know? So it's a matter of, I think, interpretation, because just because we're not putting it in Yalecrest doesn't mean that it's not going to impact people who are downtown, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I think it depends on your perspective and what neighborhood you call home.
Well,
right?
and you know, I don't want the question to sound like NIMBY. It's just about the whole basis of our zoning ordinance in terms of intensity of use, and so.
My biggest concern ultimately is how we mitigate and how we can ensure that these facilities aren't too intensive no matter where they're placed in the community, and how we offset that, or how we design it with safety and security and efficacy, I suppose, in mind.
The use as it is now is too intense for anything, and that's the problem. So, and it certainly operated to the disadvantage of people who live downtown and
Yeah.
business owners downtown, and I've listened to them talk about what they're dealing with in terms of rent rates and tenant retention, and it's very, very bad. So,
And the overall perception of, you know, it being unsafe in the Gateway or the Rio Grande neighborhood, and that is reality for everybody, right? So,
but this will help me get through the next few days with this hysteria flying around.
but you know, you'll talk about this a little bit more later on in the agenda, but we will know a lot more as a community on the 21st of this month.
Yes.
So
Thanks.
stay tuned and stay calm. Anything else? Yes, George.
Could you tell the group an update on your discussion in the council about a winter or some kind of expansion center now to get the campers and people who are living on the sidewalk into an indoor facility? You've had that discussion at the council, but nobody gave up to it too.
Yeah, you know, with all due respect to the mayor, I have some concerns with the St. Vinny's plan. My fear is that it's not sufficient for the coming winter. Last year, we had the Midvale shelter, an overflow shelter, that was just this year opened up to be year-round for families. And in opening that up to be a year-round facility for families, we ended up losing the capacity for 75 individuals to use that as an emergency winter overflow shelter.
Because they're at capacity now, right?
300. And they allowed up to 375 last year. And so we're entering this winter with a bigger disadvantage than we did last year, for sure. And although we don't have a point in time count, we haven't had a point in time count done since last January, my gut feeling is that we have a larger population that we're dealing with this year. And that's just a guess, but I think a well-educated guess. So my concern is that opening up St. Vinny's for 80 individuals, which is the same amount of people that we had in St. Vinny's last winter, we still have a deficit, plus more people. And so I'm just concerned that we're not thinking forward enough, and that we're going to find ourselves scrambling come January or February when it's freezing out, and overflowing with folks at St. Vinny's, the road home, and elsewhere. I'm very concerned about where we're going and where we're at right now, even with the mayor's plan. And we've expressed that to her yesterday, and I think she and her Deputy Chief of Staff, David Lipback, are taking that to heart. But you all know the role of this government. The way we're designed is the council is policy and budget, the mayor needs to execute. And so we really need to lean on her to drive a plan. And so we'll see. Yes, sir.
I'll make it quick. I appreciate the direction of your questions, the focus. A lot of these meetings are pretty good. But I still have one other major concern in all this, and building facilities, is that in the collective impact, none of the programs individually have been able to impact homelessness in Salt Lake City. And none of them have had studies done that show that they individually, whatever methods they use, achieve any measurable impact or results. Now, I have problems thinking that just because you bring these programs together, that they're gonna change the whole thing. And until they can actually demonstrate success and transitioning like you're suggesting, because that's the problem, the inability to transition people out of homelessness into housing, because when they get into housing on the current system now, they're still dysfunctional, and they can't manage the housing, and they end up, due to domestic drugs or whatever, back on the street again, and the loop continues. There's nothing in the system now that breaks that cycle. So these 4 facilities are going to be long-term, whatever they are, that you have at their own home, unless that can be demonstrated, and I'd be much more comfortable having that demonstrated before you built 4 of them. If you built 1 or 2 and you could demonstrate that this cycle could be broken, you wouldn't need the other 3 or 4. Or, well, how do you do that? How do you?
Well, I appreciate the emphasis on data collection and data decision-making based on good data, right? And it takes, like, good data in, good data out, and I think that's kind of what we need to keep in mind. But the county is focused on they have 2 Pay for Success programs. One of them is with the Road Home, which is focused on permanent supportive housing, and that's, I believe, where you're going with that question.
That sounds, yes.
And then the other one is with the First Step House and substance abuse treatment. But the data collection component is definitely there, and that's where we're going with the county. And I'm sorry, are you with the county?
I'm not.
Okay, I wasn't sure. You seem quite knowledgeable. So. But you're right. Thanks for raising that and keep talking about it. And I think that this time next year we'll be in a much better position with actual data in hand. So.
And right now, you're the only guys that can make sure that happens in the right way, because you are just, you know, I have confidence in that you're gonna get it done. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate that. All right, next we have Diane. If you want to come on up. Diane is the chair of the Salt Lake Community Network and the former chair of the Greater Avenues Community Council, and she is on the Homeless Site Selection Committee. So we had some interest in maybe asking her some questions and hearing an update on what's going on. So,
Okay.
go ahead.
So, first of all, I'm really happy to be here tonight, and I think you've asked really good questions, and Derek, thank you so much for all of your knowledge and background on it. The timeline is that the mayor's office currently is out putting options on properties, looking at potential properties. And these are properties based off of the criteria that was set by the commission and then prioritized by the public. So when those open houses took place a short time ago, the needs were addressed. And I think one of the things that was part of that process that was very important was they went to St. Vinny's, they went down and talked with current clients that are taking advantage of the services. And they also helped set those priorities for things that are important to them. And one of the things I think that was really sort of eye-opening to me, but also kind of attitude changing about this, was as they met with the folks down at St. Vinny's, it was really interesting. The comments that came back were very similar to the comments that were made in the public forums. The need for safety, people who are homeless, who are not criminals, who are homeless by virtue of one bad medical incident, who are homeless because they couldn't continue to pay their mortgage because they lost their job, are looking for exactly the same things in these resource centers that the communities express. Safety, the ability to be in a place where they're not identified as the others, so that they have that opportunity to get back. And so as the county is working on this and working with the city on selecting these sites, the goal is to have these resource centers be a transition point into that housing, right into homes. And that's what makes the difference between homeless and having a home. Makes you not homeless. But there's also all of those other services that need to happen. And so as the sites are now being looked at, in the next 2 weeks, the site selection committee is going to help narrow it down to those 4 that will be announced to the public. And then that public process will be, again, looking at what does it take if we're going to put a resource center here in this area. On the county website, they have some really interesting pieces that talk about what their plan is. Has anybody seen this wheel? No, a few of you have. But this lays out their plan for it's a clock. They call it a wagon wheel. It's also a clock. But it lays out with timing when various things will come on. And currently, the county is looking at the VOA site in Murray that is no longer in use, and looking at that as a place for maybe 70 beds for single women and women with children. So not a family shelter, but a women's shelter there. Then they're looking at another men's facility.
Diane,
To come on, yes.
that 70-bed facility, that is for detox, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
Okay.
It is. And so these are for helping people that are having drug issues and problems like that, but keeping families together so that they can have that whole kind of family service. So it's really interesting to look at where those 4 fit into it. And actually they are sort of the tail end of getting things done. So it's a process, it's a long process. Another thing that the county is talking about is how they're going to govern these facilities. And there is a board now, a Shelter the Homeless board, that is a governing board that is not a fundraiser. And so they're looking at expanding that. They have information about that also on the county website. But as far as the city work goes of identifying those, they're looking at even perhaps before they would open the detox facility, using VOA as a potential overflow site. And I don't know if that was different than the conversation that you had with the mayor's office.
It's different, but it's a great option, I think.
But that was something that was brought up today at the county meeting.
You're not talking about the resource center that's already in place on,
Which VOA building?
which VOA building?
The old one that is no longer in use.
Okay.
So
That's the
in Murray, there's
entry.
a facility that the VOA once had as a detox
Yeah,
facility.
on
They,
State Street there?
Right.
yes, I don't know the exact address, but it's
Six
State
something
Street
south,
and
yeah.
60
Mhm.
something like that.
Right.
They closed that because they ran out of funding, and they've been leasing it to the University of Utah, and they've been using that as some sort of medical
Okay.
bed
Dental
facility. I don't know exactly what, but the idea is to refund
Yeah.
that program and use it for families and women who are
That's good.
experiencing drug problems.
Right. And in the interim, they're talking about that as a potential overflow, if that comes. So initially, as you know, it was going to be 2 sites that were high density, 250 beds. And then the decision was made to have 4 with no more than 150 in each of those 4 locations. So, as far as the sites go, the commission doesn't know the potential sites yet. Those will be given to us in the next couple of weeks as we are taking a look at those. One of the things that I think was interesting as we were talking about this process of putting the options on properties is there were a lot of properties that they were looking at that either the people who own the property were looking to make a lot of money off of the properties, or were unwilling to sell properties. And so
What
that's
about
been-
property that's already owned by the city or the county?
Yeah, that's a great option. I agree completely. And I'd love to see city sites prioritized, given that they fall within the right criteria, you know. So that's definitely on the table.
And I think not all of these are going to be, well, like Derek was saying, they're not gonna be right in the middle of neighborhoods because a lot of the services aren't accessible right in the middle of neighborhoods, but they will be close to neighborhoods. And so that's again based off of the criteria that was set and then prioritized in those public meetings. And my understanding is that the public input that comes after the announcement of the sites is going to be in a variety of ways. Open houses are good to a point, but there's a lot that doesn't get said in an open house, right? If you're just walking around putting stickers on posters, you're not really getting to comment very well. And a lot of times you don't understand what you're putting stickers on, and so.
Or if the other side's listening.
Right. What happens once those stickers are taken home? But, so that's been part of the conversation that we have had, is that it needs to be done in a multitude of ways, that not just all on open house. Okay, so are there questions? Yes?
Another comment that I heard, I think at the last facility meeting here at the police station, was by a member of the committee suggesting that, and I think Derek has a good idea of math in this problem. I think he is a little bit more realistic than some of the figures I hear. But, and I don't know the context of this comment, but as these units were built, this individual thought or stated that they would be matched by a bed-for-bed reduction in the facilities at the road home. And now I don't understand the math of that. When the road home is full most of the time and we have people sleeping on the streets, to actually reduce the road home by 600 bed capacity and build it somewhere else and still not meeting the excess needs of the homeless community, it doesn't make any sense. I would suggest we build 6 more units or 7 more homeless facilities. I say that with a little tongue in cheek to meet the needs of the entire homeless community because that's what it would take if you reduce the capacity of the road home. And I understand the pressures the city is facing by the Downtown Alliance and the Pioneer Park Coalition, but I don't know what the answer is to because you're not gonna reduce the overall population by doing bed-for-bed substitutions.
Well, I think part of what they're looking at is in that reduction, as they're taking people away, is moving from a shelter-based model to a housing-based model.
Mm-hmm.
So again, things that are being talked about are working with people who own hotels and using hotel rooms. And we think about that and we think, okay, so would I want, would I want someone who's on drugs or mentally ill in that hotel room? Probably not, but would I want my neighbor who had their house foreclosed because they had a medical crisis in a hotel room? Well, certainly, why not? And so I think that that's all part of where that central intake that the county's looking at doing is having people who come, when they come, having the same questions asked wherever their point of entry is, so that we can place them in housing, so that we can place them in a place that's going to meet their needs. A family that finds themselves foreclosed on, not because they have drugged and gambled their money away, right? But because their child has cancer and they didn't have insurance and they've not been able to meet those medical bills. That family, probably putting them in a shelter is going to be a very traumatic kind of a move for that family. So finding the place that's going to meet their needs the best. And again, it's a process. There isn't, if we waited until the day when we had everything ready to go, we would be waiting for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a cumulative kind of a process, I think. And it's, it's like legislation, right?
So
We'll never have.
is the road home, I have 2 questions. Is the road home gonna stay available for expanded services if these 4 units don't fill up? If this transitional process doesn't work and the housing gets built, because I don't know if you've taken into consideration, I'm talking to a homeless gentleman this morning over at the library, and he says Salt Lake is a great place to be homeless because there's a lot of services, and he was really, it was a nice dialogue, he was happy. And, to get his social security card and get different stuff and get services, it was great, and it was nice to hear how he was talking about it in a really positive way. But if you add the transition people into their housing, and you put them into treatment centers, your bus station is going to be full with people coming in from Seattle and Portland
I think that that's part of what that's part of what they're looking at, and they addressed that at the last meeting, talking about how Portland set up that model of open doors to everyone, and that can't be our model, and that isn't going to be our model.
How do you stop it?
How do you stop it?
Smarter people than I am are working on this.
No, but those are the answers we need, though.
So we do, and
those are the answers we need.
right, and I think those are the questions that are being asked, and I think that that's an ongoing. But I think that if we have 0 services, right? Yes. So we make Salt Lake be a horrible place to be homeless, then we're doing a disservice to a lot of our own citizens, right? So I think
I
you're
appreciate
right.
the problem.
I'm
looking for solutions. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Just a clarification, and thank you, by the way, for volunteering your time on that committee. I know it's hard. The sites, when we started the meeting, I was pretty sure that 4 sites had been selected. It sounds, you clarified, absolutely, they have not been selected, and it seems like even the sites that may have been selected, you may not be able to actually acquire.
No, the only ones that we will be looking at are properties that will have an option on. So we're not going to pick a site and then say, now we gotta go try to get that site. So that's what the mayor's office is doing now. That's what the city is doing now, is looking at the properties, putting the options on those properties so that we have those reserved, so that as the commission takes a look at those properties that they're bringing. And the goal is, of course, to bring more than 4 so that it's a choice, right? So that it's not just them saying, here you go, pick 4, here are 4. So I think that they are working, and I think that they are doing really due diligence on trying to identify a variety of properties so that we will have that choice. And then as the commission members take a look at those and narrow it down to 4, those will be the 4 that will be announced.
Right.
So just for clarity, the mayor went with this commission and they identified a set of criteria that they would look at sites through, right? Not close to a freeway on-ramp, off-ramp, not in the 100-year flood plan, XYZ. There's a number of issues.
Not
right?
in the middle of an industrial park.
There's a number of things that they evaluated certain sites. The mayor brought to the city council in closed session a list up to 20 sites. And the city council gave feedback on those sites. The mayor then took that feedback and came to the council. So we gave feedback, then she came to the council for money, and we told her to put options on as many sites as possible with the $12 million we gave her. Turns out she'll probably put in options around 6 to 8 sites, depending on what they can get their hands on. Then, with those options in hand, she's taking them to this commission, and they will prioritize the 4 sites with those options. Then we will move forward on land use rezoning, any sort of public input that the council would normally do with these kinds of changes. So, I don't know if that helps, but.
And so a lot of the public input will be about mitigation, right? How do we make this a safe place, not only for the clients that are transitioning through here, and the county goal is to have it be no more than 30 days from homelessness into some sort of a home transition. Currently, it's 56 days. It's 56 days statewide, and is it 60 in the city?
I don't know.
We're a little bit more than that.
How did that 30-day figure get determined?
Using best practices from other cities, looking at what is a reasonable amount of time to assess and help people move and transition. And also because when you live in a shelter, it becomes home, right? And so this idea that we don't want people digging in and identifying this as
Right. The problem
their
is
home.
that we have a housing crisis.
Yes.
Exactly. And so that's where money for low-income housing.
I mean, moving people out in that time frame is.
Well, but it's not going to happen right away, right? That's the goal. The county is also working, they have several committees, and this is very heartening to me, I have to tell you. I went to the meeting this morning and left, and went to work and said, you just would not believe how many people are working on these problems on the county side. They have a committee that's now working with builders, and they've gone to the builders and they've said to them, and I apologize, Michael, and they've gone to the builders, and I gotta go run an election, but they said to the builders, what would it take, right? What is it if we could get you to build affordable housing in your buildings? And the builders came back with a number that was just outrageous at $90,000 per unit, that they wanted to be subsidized for having affordable housing in their units. So they're now working on other, they're still working with the builders, but they're looking at what are other things that we could do to help get more affordable housing. And so you're right. I mean, there isn't enough housing. There aren't enough services. have to start somewhere, right? And so if we set the goal at 30 days, and we're at 60 days, then incrementally we can move toward that goal. But there's not, I mean, and I think that I was talking to one of my, the people that I work with, and their perception was we build these shelters, we build these resource centers, and immediately the housing problem, you know, the whole homeless problem goes away. Okay, well that's not, you know, I mean, not even close. So it's all of these things. How do we encourage people not to come here from other places? So how can we set up a model that serves the needs of our people, but without encouraging people to come to Salt Lake to be, to take advantage of our services? How do we integrate these resource centers into our community in a way that everyone is served and benefited, right? So that people looking at these facilities say, good, you know, we're doing good here in our neighborhood. So, yeah.
So are you going to have, are you just gonna build the 4 facilities, or are you gonna have the housing? How is the legislature gonna get in and make sure that this functions? Because right now, you're gonna try and sell 4 facilities to the community, and if you don't have the housing in place for at least, or do this in incremental steps, so you build 1, and you have the housing to support the 150 people in there, so that within 60 days instead of your 30 days, you can transition them out. It'll be a much easier sell, because I want you to succeed, but I don't want you to start the project unless you can have some assurity of success.
Well,
Again, right now, I don't have that confidence.
right, and a big piece of this is legislative work that the county's going to have to do with the legislature, who's wanting to do away with even the 10% set aside in the CDAs for affordable housing, right? So the legislature wants to do away with that. So there we go, we've got that other piece of it. Oh, if we could solve it right now, I would stay all night if I thought we could walk out of this room with an answer, but.
Well, thank you. We
Okay.
appreciate you coming, and
So-
every other community council when we get to. Thank you so much, Diane, and obviously this is not the end of this conversation, there's lots more to talk about. So, Daniel, if you wish to come and talk to us, TSA Zone. I'll try to get us out of here as close to 7:19 as possible.
What's your name?
Diane.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for what you're doing, Diane. I know you care.
But we can know more than we do now.
Yes, we will.
We don't have to talk about that.
No, we just talk.
City gate.
No, not projects,
Yeah.
the planning department.
City gate.
Yeah, we do it actually for
2000.
libraries.
City
Yeah,
gate.
that was pretty cool.
At Liberty?
City
Oh, the library.
Right here.
Yes.
Oh, at the library. I thought you meant.
Yes, 2008.
So.
I believe.
Okay, cool, thank
Appreciate it.
All right, so I'm Daniel Echeverria.
so we're-
So I've been managing the transit station area improvement project. So I'm just here to give you a brief overview of the transit station zone and the potential changes that we're working on.
Can you clarify that zone? What is it?
Yes, so first of all, where is the TSA zone? It is on North Temple, but it's also up here on 4 South. And on 4 South, it extends from about 200 east all the way up to about 900 east. And it generally is just located right along that corridor. It doesn't extend much out beyond like a block. So what does it look like? So far, we've gotten some bigger projects. We have the Encore Apartments on the bottom left, Liberty Boulevard right across the street from it. We also have the first step house that was built across from Smith's, and that's on the top right. And then Liberty Boulevard is under construction just above 700 East. So what is the TSA zoning? It's intended to encourage high-density, active, transit-oriented development. It's meant to complement the track station that's right on that corridor. So the TSA zone is what we call a performance-based zone. That means that developments are approved through a scoring system. So a development has to receive a certain number of points in order to be approved. And the points are guidelines. For example, they're incorporating affordable housing into the development, incorporating quality building materials, putting in mid-block walkways, incorporating renewable energy. There's a very long list of different things that they can include in their developments. If they get 100 points, you can get approved. If you get less than 100 points, you have to go to the planning commission. So it's intended to encourage people to comply with these guidelines, incorporate these high-quality features in their developments. So the city council initiated the petition in June because they had concerns with the quality development beginning on the portal. The concerns primarily with building scale, materials, lack of ground floor mixed use. They also emphasized that we look at commercial ground floor uses and requiring higher quality materials and incentivizing more affordable housing. And so far we've had a number of input opportunities. We've had 2 open houses, an open city hall survey that we received a lot of feedback on. We've held a planning commission hearing, and we've notified residents within these TSA zones and right outside of these TSA zones as well.
Yeah, excuse me, was that a hearing or a briefing?
We had a hearing just to get input, but it was really just a briefing, but we wanted to allow the public to speak about the proposal before we came back with a final proposal.
Okay.
So the proposals that we're looking at change the zoning. These are a few of the main ones. A ground floor use requirement for uses on 400 South. We're proposing that 80% of ground floor areas need to be occupied by an active commercial use. That use needs to be at least 25 feet in depth, so it's actually usable. On 400 South, that would need to be specifically a commercial use. They could do residential, but we would require them to build it to a commercial building standard so that they could, in the future, convert it over to commercial use if that became viable in the marketplace. The ground level exterior requirements, we're adding some new requirements for entrances every 40 feet. Currently for residential uses, there really isn't an entrance requirement. Those entries also need to include a feature such as a porch or a canopy. Also requiring 30% of front yards to be an active outdoor space, such as dining, patios, plazas, private residential yards if you're going to have residential units right on the ground floor. And we're reducing the setback on 400 South from 15 down to 10 feet in order to encourage better pedestrian engagement as you're walking down the street. We're also bumping up material requirements. Right now there's no overall facade requirement for high quality materials. And by high quality materials, that's brick, stone, textured or patterned concrete, or fiber cement products. We are proposing a 60% requirement. So 60% of that facade has to be something besides stucco that we've been generally seeing lately. We're also limiting stucco and IFAS to 10% of the facade. Building scale has been another issue. We're limiting that down to 200 feet of length. You could go through a process, public process, in order to change that, but generally we'd be stuck with 200.
What is it currently now?
There is no limit right now. So.
What is the facade length of a project like Encore?
Encore, I believe, was 300-ish feet.
Okay.
I don't have an exact number. It's up there. Yeah. It's definitely up there. So another component of the TSA is the guideline, the point system that projects have to incorporate into their developments. We're proposing to increase the minimum number of points to 125. That's hoped to increase the quality of development and increase the quality of guidelines that they're actually using. We're bumping up the affordable housing points you can get for including affordable housing up to 60 points. Right now it's just at 30 points. Also, we're changing a lot of the standards to focus on better architectural and materials. For example, we currently give projects points for just having structured parking, but they're doing that anyway because of market conditions. So we're changing that to focus more on if you're having a parking structure, you're covering that in high quality materials. We're also adding points for developers attending a community council or holding an on-site open house, and with either of those they have to notify out 300 feet from their development. So we require proof of that before we give them any points. We're also adding a notification requirement. For any new development projects, we require notification to the adjacent property owners so that they know what's going on, how to find the plans, and when a decision will be made on their application. That's generally an overview. There's a few more things in that packet that that was handed out. And we will be publishing a final proposal on Friday, and I will send that over to you, and you can distribute that out to everybody.
Sounds good.
And that proposal will be going to Planning Commission next week on Wednesday. I'll also send that information along.
It's very important.
And then after Planning Commission, we expect to go to City Council December through March. After pass the Planning Commission, it's kind of their game.
Are there any points given for encouraging or inclusion of like mid-block connections?
Yes.
Okay.
So there is a whole guideline in that set of guidelines for putting in mid-block walkway connections, and we've upped the points for that.
Super cool.
So I don't know if it's been effective so far.
I don't think it has been.
Not at all.
Yeah.
That was just truly a tragedy with the project that's going down the corner, the old Villa Native site, the Ensign Floral. That there's only one opportunity for a mid-block crossing. Liberty Square, thank you. There's only one opportunity on that block for a mid-block crossing going east-west, and it's been closed off by this project. And I'm sorry, but I just think they should be dead in the water. If they find themselves in that situation, they need to go to the Planning Commission. It seems to be, going to the Community Council and Planning Commission seems to be the most aversive thing the city can do to a developer, besides imposing impact fees. So I just think if they're closing off the only opportunity, pretty much in perpetuity, for a mid-block crossing, they need to bounce out of the system and go to the Planning Commission. There needs to be some real pressure, not just get more points if you do this, because there's so much on the line in terms of where to put the parking structure that they're just going to blow it up, and they're gonna run up the points in some dinky little other way that's not meaningful to the public and circulation and navigation in the city and so forth. What that project, Liberty Square, is gonna do to the loading dock for Trader Joe's, Green Street, and blocking off that mid-block potential for a crossing is just atrocious. And so, I just really think they are bounced out of the system. Now that I've gotten that off my chest, and we've already included the thing that came up in our last meeting when Nora was here about the community council in the neighborhood, which is really cool. I just have to say that this is so amazing. First of all, a bit of history for people. This project was done under a HUD grant when it was initially adopted, and the planning staff was able to engage people who don't normally participate in the process, and they documented that. It was really extraordinary, and they did it on schedule. They actually got a big award for doing it, and now they're coming back and doing a data-driven analysis of what kinds of points the developers have gone after. And as I saw it, there were either no or very few for structured parking. I didn't see any points in your summary for structured parking.
In the new ones?
Right.
Right. It has to
So
be-
it was obvious to me, based on land costs, that developers were gonna use structured parking anyway. And the city gave away a whole lot of points for those parking structures. And now the city's realizing that that was a mistake. It was a predictable one from my perspective, but they've realized it, and they've analyzed what developers are using and adjusted the point system. So, I mean, this is how planning should work. They should be analyzing the behavior of the people doing developments and making adjustments in the ordinance. So it's just I always sound grumpy, but my hat's off.
All right.
Because this is the way it should happen.
Well, thank you. I think that's all the time we have, but his email's on there. You can ask him questions or send questions to me. I'll
Cards are
forward
up
them
front if
on.
anybody wants to
It's
grab
got
it.
cards up there, and this process is ongoing. Just
Thank
got one more real quick item, thank you, and
Well,
sorry.
you
got
got two,
kinda
if it's
pushed
not the
up.
one I want you to mention.
Okay, we've got two more items apparently. We have our board elections. All of our positions are open. That's chair, first vice chair, second vice chair, secretary, and treasurer. In order to vote, you have to live within our boundaries, South Temple to 1300 South, or and State Street to 700 East, and or you have to own a business within those areas. So, with that being said, who here is eligible to vote? Okay. I gotta say, I didn't have anyone who was interested in running, except for the current people who hold the seats, with the exception of Amanda Davis, who will be stepping down as treasurer. So, probably, I would entertain a motion to just re-elect by acclamation. If someone wants to make that.
Second.
Okay. All right, so let's vote. All right. Congratulations, us. All right. So we will be looking for a new treasurer if anyone's interested. It's a pretty low-stress gig since we don't have a whole lot of money anyway. But you have to keep track of the pittance that we do have. We also accept donations, tax deductible. Let's see. The only other thing I wanted to talk about was we have. One second.
Thanks, Daniel.
No, thank you.
Did you ever hear from Sizzler?
No. This is the wrong one. That's my problem. Yeah, we have not heard from Right Developers. We have new yard signs with our correct address on them now, since we moved. If you would like to host a yard sign, please let us know. We have 100 coming in because that's where the price break was. So that's quite. It was significantly cheaper than 50, so I had to go for it. So if you're willing,
That's a lot of sponsors.
if you're willing to host one, please let us know. We'd like to get those out there so we can start.
Just email you?
Yeah, just email me, or if you're on Facebook, you can send us a Facebook message with your address, or on that sign-up sheet I passed out, there's the new check mark for sign if you want to sign. Yeah, I should have explained before I passed those out, but that's what that
You're
means.
collecting signatures.
And then that's all I have. Cindy, was there something else we needed to?
Well, then almost everyone's gone. But,
Don't say that. The people on Facebook don't know that. They think this is a full room.
The next meeting, the one that Daniel will present the TSA changes at, is also the one where the Trolley Square Ventures rehearing, which is occurring as a result of our successful request to the state ombudsman. And that was postponed from October the 26th at the request of the developer to November the 9th.
November 9th. So, at home, if you couldn't hear, November 9th, Trolley Square rezone and the TSA zoning amendments, which we just discussed, will be going in front of the Planning Commission at 5:30. It's 5:30, right, Cindy?
What's that? It starts at 5:30.
Yeah, 5:30. So that's just about the most important Planning Commission meeting we have.
That's a big one.
And I think that's it. So thanks for coming, everyone.
Right.
Thank you. Sorry about the World Series.
No,
No one told me.
Go home and
Go
watch that.
Patriots.
Well, it's more than company.